them bucks that live on that state land, or just mainly any area they live, are just so intelligent, man. They don't make them mistakes, and it's all the same. You kind of know where they at, but then it's like you go to get set up on them, like, man, he got the wind in his favor. He got a couple does satelliting him or a buck satelliting him. Like, the big thing is with that late season is have that cold weather for 2 weeks. You know, it's usually about 8-10 days, and they have to feed like if I was onto that buck and we had a lot more cold weather, I probably would at least maybe put eyes on him. But it was just like there was no mast in the forest, and he would just kind of starve all day. He'd rather starve than die. You know, these deer are playing with their life. It's not like, you know, that's why I always talk about not just hoping, I just hope he walks by, or no, he's not taking any chances with his life. It's like he'd rather lay here and starve all day, maybe nibble on a couple twigs, than walk up there and get shot, you know, or not pay attention to the wind and try to go nibble on a little bit of corn. Nah, that ain't gonna happen, you know. And it's always like that everywhere you go. You know, you can find out where they're at, but they got everything in their favor. The wind, you know, the other deer satellite, everything, and they could hear and see and stuff like that. So everywhere you go, you always have that. So that's the biggest challenge you got, is trying to find that angle on them.
Lights,
camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
The Exodus Podcast.
Your source for all things whitetail.
We're live. It's episode 5, as we were just talking.
Yep.
And it's day 2 at the show. Surprise guest. I was trying to nail you down. Cameron's trying to nail you down, and then I was at the airport in the terminal, and my phone starts ringing. I was like, "Oh, Johnny Stewart's calling me." I answered, "Hey, I'll be there." I was like, "All right, sweet."
I had to get my honey-do list done, make sure to, you know, and I got some snow and ice. I couldn't work, so
yeah,
it worked out.
Yeah, it's a bummer you weren't able to work, but I'm glad it kind of worked out.
No, I don't like working.
Well, it worked out great for everyone then.
Yeah.
So the last time I stayed in touch, you know, since we connected, but once again, another 2-year gap.
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
I feel like I've seen you somewhere before, but maybe not.
I don't think, Jake. I mean,
I guess we just stay in touch.
Yeah, just
Yeah, we text back and forth
shit.
quite
Yeah.
a bit. Yeah, but yeah, maybe
2
it has
years
been
goes
2 years.
fast, though.
Yeah.
I remember you brought some backstrap to us.
Oh, that's
2
right.
years ago
Yeah.
from your
Yeah, you
Iowa
cooked it up.
buck.
That's right.
Yep,
Yeah.
at the house. Yeah.
I ain't got nothing this year.
You got a new camp, a new honey camp.
Yeah, I do. I got a big mortgage payment. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the siding on that building.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
That's really cool. Another Whitetail Cribs guest. So if someone wants to check out what this camp looked like, Big Woods, PA hunting cabin, type it in.
Public land, hunting, PA, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And really freaking cool.
It is, yeah. Thanks.
How long you wanted to do that project for a while?
I had the place for 3 years, and it took me 2.5 years. It was a camp that I bought in 30 by 25 or something like that, and I put a big addition, 40 by 20, and I put another level on it, and, you know, on paper and that, you know, I'm no carpenter or anything. This is what I want. My buddy's like, "Yeah, it's going to be huge. It's a lot of work." And I had a little piece of 8 by 12, 8 by 11 paper. Like, ain't that bad. Just look, like 40 by 20, you know. We started building it.
800 square feet.
We started building it,
Yeah.
and it never hit, like, and then I had my big machine there. I dug the footer in that, and I'm like, you know, when you're outside, you got a big, it's like, this addition this ain't bad, this ain't big. And then, you know, we put the addition and slowly got it framed in and stuff like that. And I'm like, it didn't hit me till like a year in. I'm like, holy shit, this place is huge. You know what I mean? I'm like, this thing can sleep like 12, 13 people. You know, I'm like, what the hell am I thinking? And all the work to finish it, you don't even think about it, because my buddies would tell me they were in the, you know, the business of carpentry, and there's a lot of work here. I'm like, when we framed it up in 10, 12 days, this ain't nothing. And then I come to realize that's like 10% of the project. You know, you got all the drywall and this and that, and I don't even want to think about it, you know. But yeah, it came out really nice, and I mean, it's a valuable asset, so it's cool. It'll be a lot of good times over the years. You know?
Yeah. You think you'll hold on to that forever?
I think so, yeah.
The Johnny Stewart hunting camp?
Yeah. And have a bunch of people, and it's...
Yeah, you had quite a big camp this past year even, it seemed
Yeah,
like.
I had Cam up there, almost had him a deer. Went the wrong way, and I think the next day I pushed that area, and my buddy ended up missing it, you know, and I got on him pretty hard. But, yeah, we had a hunt up there in November, the Veterans Hunt for Spartan Forge, and it was a good turnout. We had 15, 16 guys, and it was pretty comfortable. a good group of guys. Bill did a good thing there. He raised some money for a boot campaign, and I tell a lot of my buddies and that to come up, because there's just not like 1,000 acres of my own little private. There's 500,000 acres. That's what I love about it. It's like, I got areas that I hunt, and you just keep scouting the same area and you go through it. But then there's other areas I'd never even been to, and I tend to like new areas. So I'll kind of scout, and my friends will come up and here, go, hey, this is a good spot. Try this out. And I'll go, I learned that this year I hunted new places every state I was in. And that's why I learned like where I'm at. I like learning the area. To me, that's sometimes better than actual kill and like going to the same stand or same spot every year and bagging your deer. But to see a new area and learn that new area. So like in PA, where I got my deer, was a new area, and then I hunted a new area in Ohio here late season, and I was in Minnesota hunting a new area, and I'm like, why am I going to these new areas? But I've learned that I just like figuring them out. And I feel like once I figure it out, I'm like up at my camp, I figure this area, I know where the deer are, and then my buddies come like, here, you go hunt here, you go hunt here. I already know, and it's like, it's not about the kill for me right now where I'm at in my like hunting career. It's more like figuring them out and seeing other people. So I know it's a good spot already. I don't need to sit there and kill a deer to know it's a good spot. I already did, right. Or, I already figured them out. So I'm like, go check this spot out. This is good. And my buddies come up, and then I also use them as like a scout, like a camera. I'm like, and I put them in there.
See?
They're up there 3 days. I, like, I seen a big one. When you going home? I gotta get going. I'm all right. Well, I'll try that spot out for you. You know what I mean? But then you get 10, 12 guys up there. You just sit back at camp, maybe drink a beer, and them guys hunt 3, 4 days, and you just take inventory. What they're saying. You guys leaving? But I bet it's all fun.
You're gonna know every spot around that place with the amount of people you have filtering in there.
I just take notes when you see. And then after they leave, I'll go hunt it. But no, that's another way to help scout is, other guys that are pretty respectable and, not, everybody spooks deer once in a while, but send them in there and do it as a group thing, especially, you get the right group that you're not greedy or whatever, you guys just go out and work together and try this spot. Or if one guy sees 3 or 4 buck, all right, let's get all flood that area and see if we can kill them, and then if not, we could just move on. But, I hunted a lot of different areas this year, and I just like sit down and think about myself. I like the challenge of figuring that animal out. And then once you kill, it's kind of like, or once you at least figure them out, it's kind of like, okay, I accomplished what I wanted. It don't always have to be about the kill, but I like trying new areas out in that. But the camp came along really good. So
yeah, how many states have you hunted in your journeys?
I'd say probably 8 or 9 states.
Iowa, Minnesota,
Illinois, Ohio.
Plural? There are 2 Illinois?
Did I say it twice?
Talking to a native Illinois.
It's Illinois. Illinois. So like, is that plural?
Okay, I'm like, what? Okay. So Illinois.
Illinois.
I used to hunt Illinois. Anyways, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. I was South Carolina a little bit, Indiana. No, I didn't ever hunt in Indiana. I don't know how many. Montana. Anyways, about 8 or so,
Uh-huh. So out of all those different states that you've hunted, what's your favorite state to whitetail hunt and why?
Okay, my favorite state to hunt is the state that I'm in and the state I'm hunting at that time. Because I've had that asked to me before, but I've been to Iowa. So, man, this is good. I got to buy some. I got to hunt here. And then I'll go to Ohio. And I'm like, man, this is way better than Ohio. And I go, man, this is awesome. I like hunting here. I'm like that. Like, yes, I'm glad I get to go here. And then I'm like, PA ain't that good. Then I go up there. So, oh, man, this is awesome. So pretty much any state that I'm in, I like hunting. It's where I'm at that time.
Yeah.
The closest state to hunt is the state I want to be in. Because I asked myself that, but it's like, and they all, there's all different challenges and different types of terrain, and it's all challenging because the animal itself that you're hunting is challenging. So it's not so much the state, it's just a different challenge.
They said you only have 1 more year to live. You can only hunt one state. Where are you going?
Probably Illinois. I'd probably, I don't know, since I'm from PA, I like PA. I really like Iowa. I don't put in for I don't know, man. I like being up in the mountains. Like Ohio I like being on top of a mountain there, and It's hard to say. Just as long as I'm in a deer woods, I mean, there's a lot more deer. You know, if you're hunting a rut in the Midwest, it seems like the numbers are better. But there's just something about being up on a mountain. I'd probably say, as far as rut activity, that probably Iowa's. You know, if you can get in on that rut, you know. So I'd say probably Iowa. Then Illinois.
Fair. I thought you said the mountains.
Yeah, you're right. The mountains would be next. Illinois would be third.
Fair enough. In those journeys, I mean, like for instance, Minnesota, you went up there kind of on a whim. Would you say that was on a whim?
Yeah, it was kind of looked into it a little bit in the summer, just, you know, e-scouting, and it just kind of, it was on a whim. So,
And so on that trip, are you trying to draw past experiences? Because where you were at, there was elevation changes. Were you trying to draw, you know, what you learned hunting in Pennsylvania and then having a flair of Midwest type behaviors and meshing it all together? Or
yeah, that's probably what I did, Jake. I mean, first of all, I went out there after the gun season. It was late season in December, and I love hunting the bow hunting the snow, and there wasn't many places that time of year that snow, and it fell out in Minnesota, and it was down for a day, and I'm like, I could. There's maybe 15,000 acres of state land there that I was working with, and putting cameras in that was out of the question. So it was like I had 4 or 5 days to hunt, and the snow was down, and I just utilized the snow first of all to see, you know, and then driving the roads and following tracks and take, you know, just see how many deer are in the area. There's some places there's so many deer go up in the forest that you couldn't even really get set up on them. It was just like the right amount of deer population to where you can get set up on one. But the snow really, like, it took 3 weeks of scouting and just cut it down to days, you know, because if you're looking for a big buck, you just drive them roads, and then I would just see on a Spartan Forge, I'd see where the the ag was, and get up on them ag fields and find tracks. So it was like the snow's the biggest. I love the snow, and you could learn so much, and you can, like I said, you could take 2 or 3 weeks of scouting cameras and just at least that, and cut it down to 2 days of driving and hiking and finding buck tracks and doe tracks and learning where they live. But it was kind of on a whim, and so I used kind of maybe the Midwestern style where, you know, they're focused on that ag late season, and there were some bluffs and some little more rugged country, but it still had them points that there would be like a typical spot for a buck to live, and there was just enough cover in that. So and I got probably onto a few bucks, but it just wasn't the right. They didn't have the right weather, the cold weather for late season. It just hit then. The December was pretty mild, so the deer pretty much bedded all day. They didn't have to feed on that ag during the daytime.
Evenings, yeah,
you know, it was just like, so it was pretty kind of like a early December hunt to me with some snow, because they bed all day, but they were laying on them points. They'd used the wind, and just it was pretty heavily pressured piece of land. You know, if I had a few more guys, you know, if I had my guys with me, anybody, we could kind of maybe set up on them or bump them and have a little more success. But them bucks that live on that state land, or just mainly any area they live, are just so intelligent, man. They don't make them mistakes, and it's all the same. Like, you know, you can kind of know where they at, but then it's like you go to get set up on them, like, man, he got the wind in his favor. He got a couple does satelliting him or a buck satelliting him. Like, man. So the big thing is with that late season is have that cold weather for 2 weeks. You know, it's usually about 8-10 days, and they have to feed. Like if I was onto that buck, and we had a lot more cold weather, I probably would at least maybe put eyes on him. But it was just like there was no mast in the forest, and he would just kind of starve all day. He'd rather starve than die. You know, these deer are playing with their life. It's not like, you know, that's why I always talk about not just hoping, I just hope he walks by, or no, he's not taking any chances with his life. It's like he'd rather lay here and starve all day, maybe nibble on a couple twigs, than walk up there and get shot, you know, or not pay attention to the wind and try to go nibble on a little bit of corn. He's, nah, that ain't gonna happen, you know. And it's always like that everywhere you go. You know, you can find out where they're at, but they got so many everything in their favor. The wind, the other deer satellite, everything, and they could hear and see and stuff like that. So everywhere you go, you always have that. So that's the biggest challenge you got, is trying to find that angle on them. And the snow does help. Like I was talking to Chad earlier, how I went up to hunt, and I was in the ag field in the south side. There wasn't many deer tracks from the night before. I'd make a loop in this big ag field, and I could see where the deer were the night before and kind of where they headed into the timber and kind of set up on them. But the south side didn't have much deer sign. And in the timber, there were cedars, and that's where a lot of deer were coming out. But they haven't been. They didn't the night before, and then I seen where a guy shot a deer as a gut pile, and so there was coyotes on that south side, so it kind of favored the deer to the north. So it's like when I get that snow, everything's. That's the only time things are black and white in the deer woods, because there's a lot of gray areas. But you could say, like, okay, there's no deer heading to the south in this timber. And then I even want to know why. I always ask myself, and I did a little, so I found that gut pile, and it's like, oh, and I heard coyotes yipping in there, and the coyotes dragged some shit down, and I'm like, oh, okay. And the one big buck that was there the night before, I guess when the coyotes were there and this and that gut pile was there at night, the buck was on the north side of the field, and there was a due south wind, and it blew over top that gut pile, and it blew across that ag field to the north, and that one big buck track walked straight to that gut pile, like you pulling him in on a leash, He smelled that gut pile. He walked right to it, and he smelled it and just walked around. Then he went back to the north, But don't just get set up and then use it. You can, with the snow, you could judge if you get like a little skiff of snow during the night. You can see what time it is. A lot of them trackers will do that. Figure out, hey, this deer was at, maybe it snowed at 7 o'clock the night before, and then it quit. So these tracks were after it, or maybe right at, middle of the night it snowed. You can kind of gauge time by when the snow fell. But I just did a big circle in the ag field and learned where the deer went, and then I could see all the buck tracks near that point, and I kind of got set up on them. But I didn't get close enough. I can only get so close. There were some blowdowns and that, and that was that. That was pretty much my hunt. But just choosing a place to go late season, I had to have snow. I mean, just to have 4 days and trying to go into a forest with no, you can kind of guess that maybe there's good deer there, and just kind of go hope and sit in the woods if you want. But
you make most of your trips, it seems like, late season too, or you at least do a lot of late season hunting.
Yeah, I like the late season, just not because of my excavation business, but I feel like that's the time. And I'm always like watching the weather, like in through December, and if wherever I get snow, I'm going, because I could really learn. Especially like I said, I hunt in a new area or an old area, you could learn real fast what's, especially after gun season, what's left over, But if it's the food is what you want to focus on, late season. There are some type of rutting activity, but yeah, I feel like some people say you can, but I feel like you can really. If I focused all my scouting from like October, if I did everybody scouts through the summer to hunt October, November, if I bumped that forward 2-3 months, I'd probably, like, if I started my scout in October, November, and started hunting December, or like even scouting into December, like through the gun season, just to focus on January, I'd probably do just as good as if, you would do your scouting all summer to hunt that October, November. You know what I mean? I just feel like, there's the snow's there, and they gotta feed. Earlier in the year, the rut's kind of crazy. They're hard to find, and you don't got no snow. I mean, there are more deer, and you got a good chance, but you could really narrow down where the deer are with the snow and with the feed. You know what I mean? And they're just a slave to their stomach. But I even thought about that. What if I just like bumped everything forward? Like did my shed hunting and skipped all summer minerals and just started scouting like through the rut into rifle season, just like, hey, I'm just scouting. Maybe carry your gun or that, but just scout and put cameras. And sometimes I do, like I'll rifle hunt and I'll put cameras out for late season, but it's more like I hunt rifle and then, or gun through December, and then like, oh, I got to throw some cameras out because I didn't get a deer, but I feel like, man, if I just bumped everything forward and just like scouted, took my gun, but just scouted, you know what I mean? And okay, so I'm going to come back in January and hunt here. I feel like I could probably, if you get the right weather and there's some food. So like this winter, I went down to Ohio here just a couple weeks ago, and there was a place that I had cameras, and there was no mast, and the deer were real thin, far and few between. And so I went to a new spot, and I found some acorns, and it was like the deer's shit had brown in it and pieces of acorn. You see all that brown, not black. Black is usually browse, But and there was some big clumpy shit. I figured there was a buck in there, and it was like everything you wanted to find, because there was some cold weather and there was still some mast on the ground, and there's nobody else out there hunting. I mean, the only downfall of this spot was the entrance would come out of the south. It was a dead end road to the north, and you parked, and to the north was all like private. So you had to kind of walk east 200 yards and then kind of north up along the private. And it was at that, you're entering the place you're hunting, the public land, with the wind at your back. You know what I mean? And but I was just scouting a new area because the last spot kind of sucked. So I went in and just seen some hardwoods in between some clear cuts, and I found chestnut oaks were just everywhere, and there was deer shit, and I jumped some deer and jumped some more deer. And I think the one deer I seen, there was 2 ridges that run to the east, and there was points on them facing east. And in between them 2 ridges created a little bit of a soft bowl. But on the south slope of the first ridge, I jumped some deer, and I got to that ridge, and I looked north, and I seen what I thought was a decent buck, take off. So they were in there feeding, and I kind of spooked them, and I was figuring that no one's been in there. It's a pretty educational hunt that I had that you could learn from. So I found it was a new spot I went to, and it was January. There wasn't many, and I found mast, and so I bumped the does, and then on that other ridge, I thought I seen a decent buck, so I'm like, I'm going to back out. So I backed out, and I dropped a couple cameras, and I had come back the next day and parked, and I got in there at like 10, and I would just hunt all day, And that's another issue that me and Chad were talking about earlier, is like some of these places, like me and him dealt with an area that was just thick, crunchy leaves, 6-8 steep ridges. You can't even, no wind. You can't even get into your area. So fast forward to January here, when I was down in Ohio, it was just a crust and dead calm in the morning. And I parked, and I went to the east. I had to go over a little ridge, and it was like, and it's like, oh my God. And I headed up there and checked those cameras, and I had a 140-inch. He was in them acorns, but he was heading like east to west, and it just all clicked to me in my head. I'm like, this was the buck I spooked yesterday when I was in here, when I come in here at 10, and I said, he was hanging out in these acorns here this morning, and he was heading toward the private on the, at the dead end parking spot. I said, you know what? I said, he probably, and there was some thermal cover. I said, he laid there, and he listened to me this morning, because when I jumped in the day before, that parking spot, back October, November, where you guys park and they go to the east to get around that private ground, it was kind of beat down. Now fast forward to January, they let their guard down, they're feeding because no one's been in there. But I mean, they could snap back into that, putting herself on guard real fast. And I think I caught that buck on my camera, and he was heading to the west. I think he laid in them pines, and I honestly think he listened to me, park my vehicle, get out, slam my deer, put my gear. I'm putting my gear on. My hunt's already over. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I go over that. I'm like, oh man. I said, he's already on to me. And I said, he's not taking any chances. I end up hunting. I seen 5 smaller buck, handful of does, but just that smart one, and I end up leaving, and I just come back 5 days later, because I'm like, this thing is like totally on to me. You know what I mean? But you got to watch. I tell people, is like, you can ruin your hunt like this. Whether it's, I got a place nobody's hunting. I said, who's hunting there? Nobody's hunting. I said, who's hunting? You're hunting there. I said, and you're, not a ghost. You're leaving scent. You're leaving, stuff like that. So that was really educational for people, like to hear it. It's like accessing an area and real fast. I pretty much screwed up that spot like real fast, not trying, and then I come back the following week, and I hunted a day or two and seen some doe, and it was kind of the end of the season, and I threw the towel in. But I'm going to get back in there and shed on. There were still some acorns in there, which is hard to find on a lot of them places. But if you can find them acorns, it's some good. But just be careful getting into them areas. Yeah, they let their guard down, but it in that time of year, but it don't take long for them to snap back into like a hunting season situation.
I want to circle back a little bit. You were talking about the advantages of using snow, and we had talked about this previously when we were down in the kitchen, just kind of chit-chatting, and I was explaining some of the hardships I had in Wisconsin. Very, very cold weather, dry snow, fluffy type, deep snow, and we were trying to use basically the roads to kind of speed scout, cut tracks, to find a track that we wanted to kind of cut and follow. And we had a really hard time because the way the snow fell, it just kind of caved in on that track. Yeah. And we had a really hard time of, and it was cold out, so we didn't want to spend a bunch of, when I say cold, it was in the, -10, -9, -24 one day. Cold. Well, we didn't want to spend a bunch of time, tracking something we really didn't have any interest in. And you made up a couple good points. If you want to just talk through not necessarily the gait thing, but the width thing, I think is pretty valuable.
Them older, more mature deer have their chest is wider, and it produces a wider distance. I know there's you could read up on it, and I don't know. I just from experience, I could look up the road, like you said, you drive a road, and I could see how it's kind of like their feet to me, just kind of like they just kind of throw it down and face outward, like they throw. But there's width between their tracks when they're walking in their gait. If you can see one deer, and then you get so there's like a combination of things that help you out, like what Chad said with that snow falling in. It's just like you can't just say, "Yep, that's a buck," because when the snow falls in, what is it? So you can. There's a distance in the gait, and they do have a longer stride. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there's definitely a width that you could see over opposed to doe. And then if you drive up and down the roads enough when there's snow, you could see, I could fly up the road and see does because there's so many of them. And then you just that's burned into your head. And then, that's something different about that track. And you just go, it's wider and it has a longer gait. But even there's times when I was unsure. It depends on what part of the country you're in. Up north, and there's some big does, and then you're talking about 2-year-olds, might be the same size of a big mature doe. So, it can get a little bit confusing, and I would always try to get on a track of a deer or a few deer, at least follow them for 50 yards to help you take the average. You could have a doe that slips down the hill and make it look like it's a 250-pound buck, So, follow a ways, and the buck is going to kind of sometimes do his own thing, zigzag, and he'll tend to go his own way. Even if he gets in with some does, just do a half circle or circle around, and he'll usually go on his own way, and that's usually a buck. But if you get a situation where you got maybe a big buck and a couple 2-year-olds, you might think it's a doe and some fawns. But I know there's sizes, and the track itself. If you have like a stiffer snow, them bucks. Or like their holes where they put their legs down, it's a lot bigger. And it's kind of like more of a square where them does are kind of like, I just call them holes. And look at them little holes, because they got them little legs going down there, but they're close together. But yeah, I try to follow them for maybe 50 yards, and it can be confusing. Sometimes I ask myself, man, what the hell is this? What am I fault? But you keep going after it. It's like, yeah, you just you take the average over 50, 100, 200 yards, and if it seems like on the bigger end, the chances are it's a big deer. They could step on a rock or this and that, and oh man, look at the size of that track. It might be just a doe, but there is actual measurements and size of tracks, but yeah, with that fluffy dry snow, it could be really hard because it's just it just falls in, and you could hopefully look at the overall width if you can single them out, and then sometimes them big ones don't want to walk on it; they just follow them. If they zigzag and they go around branches, may have a bigger rack, but then But then I just kind of know from experience, but there are actual inches, and a deer's gait is 18 inches. A big buck's is 20. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Where did you learn some of that stuff? Did you have I mean, you're in northern PA. Obviously, you guys get a lot of snow. I mean, did you spend time with anybody in like the Adirondacks or like in the Northeast, for example? You have the Hal Blood guys. You have all the guys that will track deer, and that's essentially how they hunt. And I know that kind of fits into your style. Is that something like you just kind of picked up on your own, or did you have somebody help you along or teach you some of that stuff? Or
I think when I was younger, where I grew up, a lot of the deer were immature deer, 2-year-old yearlings. So I was used to seeing that track, the size of the immature, the yearlings, does, and 2-year-old yearling buck, and even in the mud, or on a sandy or a dirt road, and then I think it was then I seen that religiously because that's all there was when I grew up. Then you'd see a big one, like, oh, and so you just kind of knew. But as far as tracking deer, I learned. I think I used to chase deer. I thought I was just gonna run them down, and I didn't do too well on that. I just thought I just got to keep, and I jump and I keep running. I'm going to get him. And I put 10 miles on, but it was not, I keep going. But a buddy of mine, from Massachusetts, I learned a lot from him. He's in his mid 60s, and he kind of hunted with the Benoits, and he tracked up in Ontario and Massachusetts and Montana. And I'm trying to get him to do some podcasts, and so I've learned so much from him. I think I went tracking with him one time, and I said, you got to come up to PA and track, Tom. I was like, it's tough up there. And he's like, yeah, John, I'll come up and hunt with you. So we went down the road, cut a track, and he pulled off, and he just said, he was like, his game face was on. He said, you just follow me, you look left and right. I said, chances are, he said, you get behind me, you look left and right. Because chances are, when we're going forward, the deer's going to be left or right, because they jay-hook, and that's where they bed. But I learned so much from his one little tracking trip. And, we went in the woods, and he seen the deer ran, 20 yards. He said he ran because we drove by with a truck. And then he said, let's just wait a minute. And then we just let him get out ahead of us because he'll forget about you, And then he got into a bunch of doe, that buck, and he said, you stand right here and look. And there was tracks on top of tracks. And then he said, he went this way. And we started down. He's like, we got to stop. I'm like, what's going on, Tom? He was all stop, go. I said, don't we just chase him down? We'll just go after him. We're going to wear him out. Stop. He said, we got to wait. And we stopped. I'm like, all right, like 15, 20 minutes. And then we go down there 200 yards. The buck stopped and looked back. He's like, oh, these guys coming after me. So then he said, they'll forget about you, Then we went across. We come up his hill, and the deer started feeding it. And he told me, he's like, oh, he's close. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, he was dead serious. This deer's close. Like, whatever. And then we crested a hill down into like a kind of a valley, and we got to stop. I'm like, oh, man, what's all this stop go? He's like, let's eat. I was like, I'm so pumped up, I can't eat. You know what I mean? I'm ready to shoot this big buck. And short shit, we walked up on him, bedded. It's about 100. I'm like, and it jumped up, and Tom took a shot at it running. But I was like, holy this dude just walked up on his bedded buck up in these mountains. I never did that in my life. And it was just like, he's like, but like, he would tell me stories of deer that he hunted up. He did Maine, and then everybody went to Maine because of Benoits, and everybody were probably, then he started going to Ontario, and up there he was telling me about the guys that hunted there would stay at camps, and these people would bait the deer up there because the populations were low with wolves and shit. And so him and his buddy were the only ones that didn't sit on bait posts. They'd go out track, and he's talking like one deer per, I don't know, what is it, 5 miles, one buck or something. You know what I mean? Something just ridiculous. And he's telling me these stories, and this one was pretty wild. The wolves were pretty thick up there, and this one buck he tracked, it would jump down through these rocks, and that's how it got away from the wolves, because it would jump off this cliff. And he found his shed there, and then when he was tracking him, he fell, and his rack hit the ground. Like, this is how he got away from these wolves. This buck, it would jump off his cliff, and the wolves wouldn't do it, But he ended up, and he would hunt these deer for like 8-10 days, and probe. I'm just probing around, and he'd learn them. And then he's like, and I just talked to him here a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, I said, Tom, I haven't killed many deer in the last few years. I said, and I did a lot of podcasts talk about it. I said, but I just enjoy hunting. Like, I enjoy finding them. He said, John, hunting's way better than killing. You know, you get the experience. I said, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not saying, I said, I could probably go out and if I wanted to kill deer, I could, but he would tell me these stories, and that one buck jumped off that cliff and he ended up killing it, you know, but he would go for like 8-10 days, pro around, and then he'd be like, I'm going to go kill this deer. And no shit, he killed most of his deer on the last day, you know. And I remember the one story, he sent me out to Montana. You could go out to Montana and track, and that was before I did that little track with him, and it's huge wilderness, you know. I'm like, oh, fuck, this is ridiculous, you know. But snow was melting. I was got on the one track, but the snow melted and got warm. But he told me the one, you know, story of the mountain lion was chasing a deer, and he was like following a deer, and he come up and the mountain lion's to the left and the deer's to the right. He's like, oh, I didn't even see the mountain lion. I shot the buck. You know what I mean? But I told him, I was like, man, Tom, I said, you got to tell, you know, but he got some crazy stories and really optimistic. That's another thing, you know, you just believe in yourself when you're out there hunting, you know, and don't just like sugarcoat it. Say, oh yeah, this is a spot. I mean, do you really believe this is a spot and this is what's going to happen and everything's going right, you know? Or is you just saying that? But he was real confident, you know. But it's time. And I said to him, and he would almost have like these intuitions where I said, you ever get in a spot, Tom, where you just feel like your heart's beating, you know, this is it. He's like, and he has stories like, yeah, I mean, that happened to me a lot. He said, there's times I knelt down and pulled my gun up and aimed because I believed the deer was going to come through, and he shot. I'm like, what? I said, I ain't got none of that shit going on. But he's like, it's experience and instincts over time. All these years and time you put in the woods, it all feels right. You know, the weather's right and the food's right. Like when I was in Ohio here in January, it just felt like, you know, besides bumping that deer, it just all came together. You know, it's the feeling you get from all that time. Because there's like, I even say like, you know, these deer can't explain why they bed in this spot or why they feed here. They just do from experience, and it's safe to hunt here. I mean, it's safe to feed here and hide here, and this is what worked, and this is what to do, and it comes instinctual to where all that time in the forest and scouting and hunting, it just everything comes together to, you know, this is it. This is where like them bucks, they're bedding on that point. This is it. I know, you know. And it's not when they're younger. They don't just kind of scratch their chin and say, hey, I wonder if this is good. It's like, no, I know this is where I need to bed. And then I was talking to Chad about one buck that I was following the one year, and it was during gun season, and he had gone to maybe a piece of land that he wasn't familiar with, and because it was gun season, and he kind of got bumped maybe out of his own little territory. There was snow on the ground, and he was like if you walk through a parking lot, you don't know where your car's at. Like, this is what he was doing. He was like going over here, going over there, but I followed him, and he was actually looking for a certain bed that he probably used only during hunting season. He was only over there once a year, you know what I mean? Because and then I bumped him out of that bed. He had a big oak tree and a blow down. I took a picture of it, like ideal beach brush behind him, you know, but, you know, he was just kind of walking around like, where's my car? He's like, where's this bed at? And I followed him left and right, you know what I mean? But it's that bed that he felt comfortable in, you know, and it was just, it felt right when he laid there, and you know, everything looks right. He can't look at the bed and be like, okay, see, I got that oak tree there, you know, and I got the wind right. This is why I like bedding here. And then he just like can feel it and sense this is the kind of place I want to lay in. And he lays down. And a lot of time hunting is like that, just being in the woods so much and learning and reading and asking yourself a lot of questions, which you are able to do, you know, and a deer can. It just put you in the right spot, you know.
So kind of off the curveball here, not really curveball, but kind of off topic. Do you keep a journal or anything of like your historical spots? Like, how are you tracking all this information, or is it just like? I
think it's in my head, and I think I told myself here in the past couple of years, I said I should have had a journal every time I went out and every time I did this. I could have written a book because all the dumb shit I got into, all the places I hunted, the people I met, and got lost in the woods. You know, just everything you've done, you know, you could write it down. But I think a lot of it is in my head. But I think now that I have less time and I'm trying to, because I built my hunting camp and with my excavation business, I feel like I'm still trying to fit everything in, like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Like I used to go hunting and have a lot more time, and I'm starting to not remember so much because my head's on other things, you know. So I think with the Spartan Forge app, you know, I've been really putting in where I see a scrape, where I see a rub, because, you know, I get going somewhere else, another state, and excuse me, you know, you forget that stuff. And I know in the past I would scout in the springtime and this and that, and I was talking to someone else today about shed hunting. Sometimes you get focused on shed hunting when you're out there finding that horn, that's not the exact place that a deer is going to be the following hunting season. They might, you know, live in a different area, rut in a different area, and you're so focused on the horn, and then you fail to. I'm like, yeah, I remember I was shed hunting last year. Would this, you know, and maybe you catch a deer the following year on a camera, like, man, I can't remember where, you know, where I think he might be because I didn't really, you know, jot down. But a lot of it over the years is instinctual, you know. Spending a lot of way more time in the woods than I do now, you know, it becomes like a part of you, just like that deer is a part of your home. You know what I mean? You go to the woods all the time, so I knew more, but now I'm stretched thin. I'm not that much time in it. I'm going to different areas, and years go by, and the woods change. So now I'm just really putting it. And he got that journal feature, and I think this year I really want to start and you could speak into it. You know, it's like it's a no brainer. You know, like, hey, December 28th, here, this is where I hunted. It was 30 degrees, and I didn't see nothing. You know, and then I dropped a pin here, or maybe the coordinates, put that in there. But I think this year I'm going to get more into that, you know, because I'm stretched a little thinner, you know, to where then I can go years, you know, ahead and look back and see that, you know, all that info that's there. And I'm going to try to, like, my cameras, I'm so busy that sometimes I throw cameras out and I pull them, and I'll just look at my digital camera, then I'll put them in another spot. Then before you know it, like, people laugh at me. Like, I know Bo and that sometimes. I'm like, I'll be just looking at a deer or I look at my computer. I'm looking at this. He's like, that's a good buck. He's like, where's that at? I'm like, I don't know. That's the last place I had a camera. I don't even remember. It don't even look familiar. Who knows where? I did that so many times. I'd be looking to pull a camera maybe in Ohio, and there's just like this big buck. I'm like, this wasn't here. And there was snow on the ground. I said, it's not even snow. I'm like, I don't even know. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, so I want to get more. I want to get better with that and putting in my computer, you know, and so I could log all that. But even, you know, like I talked to Steve Shark, and he runs hundred some cameras, but even the 20 that I run, 30 cameras I run, it's still, you can see the days that things are happening, and I call him and he's like, yeah, same here. So my 30 still, you know, he just gets more, you know, going on, but it's the same percentage, you know, the same dates things are happening. But I think that's really important to know, and where we are in, you know, the hunting industry and where we're going. It's like, I mean, we're starting to predict a lot with everybody's camera, and then like with the Spartan Forge, all the deer data. It's getting really, you know, there's a lot of good information out there that you could plug in, and people are using that you could really narrow down where you want to hunt. And if you keep a log, you know, on your cameras, which I'm sure you guys got all that shit dialed in pretty good, you know. So
still room for improvement. There's times where I'm looking at a picture, I'm like, I don't know what farm or what's going on there, and then it takes a while. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And it's funny that you mentioned that. But so you run around 20 to 30 cameras then?
I think I got about 30.
Yeah.
Usually about 20 up PA, and you know, I got about 10 to 15. You know, about Ohio, and I usually take a few out of state, or I'll just scramble some up. But then, you know, I usually get 8 or 10 stolen. No, I'm probably 4 or 5 stolen a year. That's normal. You know
PA
what I mean?
Or
wherever
it doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
Ohio, or or you're like, oh, it's here, and then the car is gone. It's like, I was like, dude, just check it. You're allowed to know what's there. You know, carry camera. You know, but I know it is what it is. I don't get down over that stuff. I'm hunting public land. It's out there. I don't discourage. You keep looking forward and being optimistic. It's like, all right, well, maybe he really didn't. He needed it more intel than me. You know what I mean? I'm just like, sure. That's a lot of guys get so down, and so guys want to just like, oh, I want to find that guy. It's like, dude, who can let it go? Go find a deer. You know, okay, so that dude, so your camera's going. Who cares? Mm-hmm. get over it. Some guys just can't get over that. Or I knew one guy, he was worried about where everybody parked. And this one guy would go up in the snow. He'd park in every parking spot, like no people were parking there. You know what I mean? Like all this,
clever.
all this stuff that I'm like, if you guys would just worry about
Hunting
deer,
yeah,
and not getting over on that guy, or I want to find that guy, I'm gonna, I'm like, it's gone. All right, I'm just gonna go buy another one. Instead, it's like, people just can't get over that. I mean, it is what it is. If you're really focused. And my buddy, I said, quit hunting people and hunt deer. There's a guy hunting there, and I'd say, there's a guy hunting there. I'm like, all right, I don't care. He's allowed. And I even said it before, a lot of, like, just my recent hunt there, I was in there one day, and them deer were on to me like that. I said, that guy parks there a few times. I guarantee the deer are on to him, so I'm just going to, use him as like a decoy or whatever, and just kind of go find out where they know he's there, and that's that time of year. It's like, there's guys in the woods, what are you going to do? Get over it, You're going to be a little smarter, and them bucks are surviving, with all them guys in the woods, so you got to be able to get an edge on them.
Mm-hmm. Is 30 cameras the right amount for you? I mean, if you could run more, would you run more, or is it just a time aspect?
I think now that my camp's done, I have a little more time. I think 30 to 40s, I could probably fit a few more in. I feel like I could, because then it's just, there's times I like putting 2 or 3 cameras in one area, facing northeast, whatever, you know what I mean? And you could put cameras all day, and talking about batteries and, cards and that, I'd say, 30 to 40, I'd like to put a few more.
So like 30 in Pennsylvania and 10
yeah,
floaters. Or
yeah,
15
that's about right. Yeah,
yeah.
And like in that PA, but then you keep getting sucked into learning a deer, and then is it good? Are you going that route, or you want to hunt? You just focus on one spot. Then you start stretching, or like Steve is a guide. You start stretching and I could see myself being that way just because I'm so curious about the animal and learning all these areas, and I don't even have enough guys to hunt it. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Or do you just focus up? And then in the past years, I haven't had one deer that I wanted to hunt, so I'm just kind of like, I've said this before, kind of like lost in space. It's kind of like I don't have one animal to focus all my attention to, and I'm just kind of looking for that deer in limbo, and not like, it's been years since I had that one deer just get that laser tunnel focus vision. You put all your cameras on him, and I'm just kind of learning and putting cameras and seeing deer, and sometimes I don't even know where I want to hunt, but like I said, that's where I am enjoying hunting. I try a new spot, or there's a couple good bucks here, but nothing to like get into a different, that's what I was telling Chad, get into like a different mental mode to where, you do whatever it takes. You're laser focused. You're like numb, and whether you got to get out at 4 a.m. and get in a tree or hunt 4 days straight, if you got that 160, 170 inch deer, to really laser focus in on, you just become a different person to where it's not even fun anymore, and right now, like, I'm been working a lot and working on my camp. I'm going out and hunting with my buddies and having fun. But when you can, if you really want to, if you're really worried about harvesting a deer or shooting a mature animal and killing that animal or getting a few bucks, I mean, you to overcome them bucks on that public ground, you got to really be like numb, like do. They're so intelligent to overcome them. You might have to get out in a tree at 3 a.m. I tell you, I think he's bedding here. I said, put 10 cameras in his bed and, check him at dark. And if he comes in there at 5 a.m, get there at 3 a.m. You know what I mean? There's just, that ain't fun. But how bad do you want it? Just not hunting, whatever you're doing in life. Like right now I'm enjoying hunting. If I find that 170 on public ground, I want it bad, but I just enjoy it. Just like, not just hunting, just how bad do you want something? How bad do you want to be successful, whether it's hunting or your business or whatever it is. It's just endless. You could just spend all your days, like if you're after one deer or just one, spend all day, every day in the woods, like Steve Shirk and them got, like, that's what they have in common. These guys are killing these bucks and they're just spending endless amounts of time in the woods. And you need to do that if you want to be successful. The deer live there 365. Say you just put 40, 50 days in the woods, as opposed to, 3 or 4, and that's what's going to help you kill an animal. Not just you can read articles so you're blue in the face and stuff like that, but till you get out there and experience what's really going on, you know.
So in a typical season, you're self-employed, October, November, December. This is a typical season. How many days do you get a hunt?
Well, this year was a little bit subpar because I did work on the last 2 years. I'm working on a camp, so I worked on it up into November. So I didn't. And then we had that veterans hunt, and I didn't really hunt much. Help them guys because we had a bunch of guys hunting, and I didn't. You know, I got some deer head on a wall, and I could see it be dragging some big buck, and everybody coming, yeah, Johnny, you got all these deer on the wall, and so I kind of like didn't hunt. I got 2 days to hunt in PA, and it was like the 18th, 17th, 18th of November, and it was pretty dead. And I went to Ohio 3 days, 19th, 20th, and I did 1 day, and after gun, and then PA gun. You know, so I probably did 3 weeks of hunting this year, which is, you know, to try to hunt different states, especially when you don't live there. I don't live close to anywhere I hunt, which is that's really, and everything's changing, whether it's hunting pressure or the food source or the weather, and you know, and get there to check your cameras, see what's, you know, and I want to shoot a mature deer, and then usually I want to know what's there, and so that's a lot of work, you know, and being somewhere for 3 weeks and trying to find out what's there and stuff. But I mean, ideally, I'd like to have, you know, 6 weeks, you know, but then I would still space it out where you'd hunt 4 or 5 days, 6, 8 days.
Watching the weather. Yeah,
watch the weather, do your hunt, or get there, scout. I feel like a lot of times I only have 3 days, then I got to get back home and do something. It just, you need to be comfortable and have that time, you know, like 4 days of hunting, 3 days of scout, 7, 8, you know what I mean? And then by then you'll be burned out anyways, you know what I mean? If you go hard at it, you know, but it's if you're pressuring yourself, and I do that a lot lately because I'll have 3 days of hunting. It's like, it just doesn't, I try to force it. It doesn't work, but I like to just have 3 months of hunting, but in them 3 months you wouldn't hunt. You'd still only hunt 15, you know, it's just, but you would be relaxed in your hunting, and you're like me and Chad was talking about, the leaves are crunchy, 5 inches tall, and yeah, I'm going out there and hunting. Really, you only got 3 days. You're going to go up on that mountain hunt because you're here to 3 days of hunt. I said, or you go back to camp and drink beer because it's like, or what you probably should do but you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go out and hunt. The leaves are 10 inches thick, and they hear you 600 yards away, like you said, on that one spot. You know, the hills are pretty steep, and it's just like, really, you might as well just stop. But you know, I did it this year too. Me and Bill hunted. He went up one hole. I went up the other. He said, "I heard you." I said, "I know." I said, "We're going to hunt for 3 days. What do you do?" You know what I mean? But even like the wind, I talked to a guy today at the show. He was saying, I said, you might have to, you know, sometimes, yeah, you try to be a diehard, get out there and hunt, but maybe you just got to wait till, if you got a mild breeze, maybe wait till the thermals drop, and then you go and hunt 1 hour. You know, that's not about being out there all the time, but you need the time to do that. You know, if you got 3 days of crunchy leaves, maybe you just check cameras for them 3 days, and you wait for the rain, or you know, maybe you just hunt maybe you hunt the bottoms, or maybe wait till the wind picks up. You know, but when you're on a short, you know, term, that you sometimes just get out there and hunt, because that's what you're there to do. But if you had more time, you'd sit back and think, well, I ain't going out there today. It's crunchy and this and that, and well, maybe I'll hunt the bottom, and maybe down a hollow, or you know, and you just kind of, and then you get a rain day. Okay, now I'm going up there, or maybe you just check cameras, or maybe you go to a spot where it's crunchy, or maybe I'll blow them out over here, and then maybe you'll walk through the whole forest another place, and like, oh man, there's guys here, and then you leave your spot to last. But you need time to do all that stuff, you know. It takes time to you know. There's always times where it'll happen like that, but for the most part, you know, you need 6, 8, 10 days, you know, to go out and check your cameras and get set up and make a plan and stuff like that. You know, if you had all month, that's great. But then even like the rut, it comes and goes, and everything changes from October. It goes mast, you know, feeding on mast, then hitting scrapes, then chasing does and not eating, then laying down. I've seen it, you know, they just kind of lock down, they say, or just they're just kind of war. It's just like things change so fast through October and November. Yeah, you got to keep on your toes when you go to them spots, check cameras and see what's going on. And if you have time, sometimes it's best, like I talked to Zach from the Hunting Public. Sometimes you just don't have a plan, and you just kind of see what's going on when you get to that spot, and you learn what the deer are doing. But you need that, like, and there's you got time, you know what I mean, to get to a spot, and let's just fill it out. Maybe we do got a camera. We'll check out. Maybe you should try this spot, but you know, for the most part, it'd be nice to have some time and not have that 3 or 4 days, or you know, it's tough to, because I've done a lot of good when I didn't have a plan and I had some time, and we got all week. Let's just ride around. Man, there's some deer chasing doe over here. Well, okay, maybe we'll set up here, you know, and just have fresh hot sign. You know, maybe that's all you need to get set up on them. You know, so.
No, I think do we have some lightning questions, or like the lightning round?
Yeah, I sprinkled in a few here, but let's cut right to it. So on some of these, I don't want to ask this because you can answer it if you want. How high are you hunting on your sets? Floor,
you mean
ground
like
level,
how high am I? Like,
yeah, typically. Like, are you?
I've been getting
sets of 18, 20 feet, 12 feet.
I've been getting lower now. I don't know. I think it's come older. You know what I mean? It's like I used to go 25, 30 feet. I felt like I could just fall out of a tree. I just grabbed a tree and ride it down. Like, you know what I mean? And I feel like I'm a little bit less nimble now. You know, like that's why I'm going to get back in the gym and working out. But I thought I was like a cat. Now I'm like, shit, man.
12 feet's looking pretty high.
I was like, you know what? I got all the force to break me up. Now I'm like making it work, which is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't need to get up that high. And, you know, 15, 18, you know, I think that's sufficient. I got a story. I just told my buddy the story. You'll laugh. So this is 2 years ago. I was in Ohio and I had a climber, and I locked it on a tree, and there was a scrape down below me in the cedars 40 yards. And I got the bottom locked on the tree. It was like 8 in the morning, kind of windy. And then I tied my bow rope to my stand. I tied it to my bow, and it was like 20 feet, you know, my rope. So I kind of step up onto that platform, and I had to climb apart, you know. I don't know if I took a step around, but I looked down at that scrape, and there's a buck at that scrape at 40 yards. He's working that scrape. I'm like, oh, shit. And he had his rack. He was facing me, and I knew he was going to, because the road was there. He must have come from the road, and he's coming up. I'm like, oh, man. So I'm like standing. I had all these clothes on, you know, trying to stay warm. It was going to be cold. And I'm like 42 inches off, like 3.5 feet off the ground, you know. And it was a little bit of slope. So, like, my bow's like 4 feet below me, you know, like, you know, and I had all these clothes on. I'm like, I said, do I just pull all this rope, like stand there, pull all this rope, make all this movement? I'm like, nah, I got it. You know what I'll do? I said, I'll just hop out of the tree, grab my bow and knock an arrow real fast, like a cat. Like, you know, I'm like, no problem. It didn't go that way. I had all them clothes on, you know. And, you know, it's cold in the morning, your legs are stiff. I hit the ground. I went rolling down the hill, you know. I hit the ground like thud, and I went rolling, hit my bow, you know. And that deer just took off. Like, what was that? I'm like, oh my God, you know what I mean? But you know, I thought I was just gonna like a cat, just like prance out, grab my bow, yank it back, and take a shot, you know, all real quiet and stuff. You know what I mean? And then the one, that's another story about being nimble or whatever. I think I was in. I don't know if it was an old stand I found somewhere. It's like just shit I should have wrote down. Like I remember I was an old stand, and there was like this maple tree, maybe 5-6 inch diameter, and it was like 3 feet away, you know. And I don't know if it was a fixed or a ladder stand I found, you know. And I was only up, like, it wasn't high, you know, 8-10 feet. I said, I'm going to see how good like, if you fall out of a tree, I'm just going to jump to that tree and just kind of ride it down. Like, I said, I'm going to try that just to see, you know, if that would really work. When I jumped at this tree, and I, like, you know, your grip, like, you're going to hold yourself.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know, like Spider-Man on a building, you know. Shit, I plowed it in that tree, fell down on the ground. So, like, I'm like, man. But like I said, I started working out because I haven't worked out in a few years, and I'm trying to get in better shape, because when you get to 40, you know, you're kind of like on the backside a little bit. So I want to make myself maybe I'll get a little higher. But the shit I've done is just like, you know. And then one time, this is when I was young, I had a lock on, and this was back before harnesses and shit, and there was a dead tree, and it fell, and it leaned on another tree, and it was pretty kind of gradual going. I said, well, I'll just walk up that tree hang a, you know, and it was over top of deer trail. I'll hang my lock on. I don't even need no screw and steps, you know, it was just on private ground. I was like, this is perfect. So I hunted it a few times, and then I went up there to one day, it was raining, and by now this tree is like a year old. The bark's like ready to just fall off, you know, and I'm walking up this tree, and it's probably 15 feet off the ground, you know. So I remember getting up in a tree and sitting in the stand, and I looked over my shoulder, and there's a guy rabbit hunting. I'm like, shit. I said, I'm you know, I'm like, I'm out of here, you know. So I start walking down that tree, and the dude like seen me, you know, he's seen this whole go down. This is good, you know, he probably laughed. So I started walking down that tree, and the bark fell, and I slipped. You know, I'm probably, you know, 10, 12 feet off the ground at this point, walking on that tree, coming down. So the bark fell, and I like fell, and I like onto the tree, but then I kind of went underneath the tree upside down, and my legs are hanging on, and my hands are on it, and I'm just like hanging upside down. This dude's just looking at me, you know, and I just started shimmying, and then I got down to where it was low enough, then I hanging, and I dropped where my feet were like 2 feet off the ground, you know what I mean? But it was just like, this dude's probably, look at this guy here, oh my God. You know? But the things you've done is just like, you know, and then you get in deer hunting, you're just worried about deer hunting, you do dumb shit out there, just like, and I got like grabbed my bow, and I had to go past him. I went the other way. I mean, we gonna say, how's your hunt going? You know, what are you gonna say? I mean, I look like a real jackass, didn't I?
That's funny. All right, here's one for you. What's the best deer hunting advice you've ever been given?
I think just in general, be not just in hunting in general, be optimistic and confident, you know, of your scouting and what you're doing, and believe in yourself. That just takes, you know, not just hunting, but I feel like that's when you're going to be successful. But you got to really believe it, and you know, if you believe it, you'll say it, you know, in time, you know. But and I always say, like I tell people, like I see things in people, like you can do it, but really, I've heard this saying, and it rings true, is like, if you think you can, you're right, and like people say, I can't, and if you think you can't, you're right too, you know, which I believe that wholeheartedly. Like, you can do it, I can't. Well, then guess what? You can't. You know, if you can, then you can in general, you know. But yeah, just believe in yourself and being optimistic and try hard, have a good hard work ethic, and it just goes where with other businesses or hunting's the same. It's a challenge, just like having a business or whatever you might do in life. Trying to work out or lose weight, it's tough. It's a really challenge to be successful. That you got to be, you know, believe in yourself and work hard at it, you know. And that's why I like hunting on public ground, because to me it's really challenging, you know. And then but work hard at it. So
it's a good place to end it. Be positive. That's unless you had something.
Well, one other thing, not a question, it's a statement, and it comes from Cameron. So after he spent some time with you was it November or December? I think he was it what?
Yeah, last end of November he come up, yeah.
Shot the Whitetail Cribs episode, did a little bit of hunting with you. He comes back to the office, and the statement was, this is not word for word, but something along the lines of, there is no human that walks on earth that is more in tune or more like a whitetail buck than Johnny Stewart.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Cam.
Is
that good?
You brought that up earlier today, and even talking, like listening to you here, I was like, I can see your point. You just think a little bit different than most people, I think. I don't know.
And I think in general, just I feel like I'm a little bit different in general, not just in the whitetail, just how I learn things, you know, and how I see things. It's like, and I relate that to hunting too. But
yeah.
I've learned a lot from the animals. But I put like, you know, just watch them and learn from them, and just, you know, from they're the ones that are the best teachers out there, you know, when it comes to deer hunting. Like that, you know. So cool. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks for making the trip down here. Like I said, I know you're busy. To to make a point to come down. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun. I like hanging out with you guys, and I like BS and talking deer. So,
But yeah, if people want to find you, where should they do that?
I'm pretty much just on Instagram, the Johnny Stewart, and if you got any questions, I'm always trying to help people and scouting or whatever, and yeah, shoot me a message, and so yeah, that's it.